Hey everyone, for this episode of Adam Answers, I'm going to be looking to Facebook for a question that came in. This question came from Paul Kenneth Benavides. Hopefully I said your name correctly. And Paul posed a question where he said, what will I do on clients saying the same responses after asking SF questions? And Paul, this is a really great question because sometimes we find that clients do indeed answer the same way. Oftentimes that response is a difficult response, like, I don't know. Or what we ask what difference it would make, and they say it would make a big difference. Well, what impact would that have? It would have a big impact. And you can find yourself going in circles or getting the same kinds of answers. What would be the first thing you would notice? I would be happy. What difference would it make if you were happy? I don't know. I guess I would just be happy. So you can find these repetitive responses quite a bit. I think there's a couple of things that we can do to kind of work through this process. One, we need to understand that it is our responsibility to accept every client answer as the correct answer. That if they're giving the same answer over and over and over, that means that that is their right answer. So I think that's an important thing to remember because that can help us avoid getting frustrated or upset or feel like you're not cooperating here. And so that then leads us to the thought of like, why is this the right answer? Oftentimes, if the answer is, I don't know, there's a key in there, or there's a bit of information in there that says, I might need to change the question to make the question more answerable. One way that we can do that is we can say things like, let's say I say, what are your best hopes? And the client says, I don't know, I haven't really thought about it before. Well, if you and I did something useful here, what difference would that make? I don't know. I don't really feel that hopeful. You can hear in those two responses, I try to change up the answer, and I think I can continue to change the way that I phrase the question. I can say, if you took the time you needed to think about what would be the thing you would hope to have happen as a result of coming here, what do you think that would be? If you and I worked just right, and you were really pleased that you were here today, what would you be happy to see as a result of the work that you and I do? So one indication, if the client says the same answer over and over, is that I need to change my question. I need to slow down and I need to say, the client might actually not know. They might feel stuck in this moment. And my rephrasing of the question is an important component to helping them to move through that stuckness, to get to a place of, okay, I can finally articulate this. So I think that's one thing that's important. The other thing I think that can help us to kind of move away from getting the same answers is to incorporate their answer into the next question. So if they say something like, well, I would just be happy, and you say, what difference would it make if you would be happy? I don't know, I just would be happy. Then you take those words of I would be happy and you incorporate it and you say, and if you noticed that you were happy as a result of being here, what else do you think you would notice? And by incorporating that answer and by then adding what else would you notice, it becomes impossible for them to answer the same thing. Because now I've said, I understand that you want to be happy, but I'm also asking for additional information. And in order to cooperate with the conversation, they have to come up with additional answers for that question. So sometimes putting their language into the question, it requires a different answer to come about. The third thing I would say is that if you're getting the same answer over and over and over, that might be an indication that you're not really connected to your client in a meaningful way. And so one of the things that I would say is take some time to evaluate, am I being robotic or mechanistic? Or am I actually listening to what the client wants? Am I actually formulating questions that come from a place of deep love and care and compassion? Am I conveying to my client that I hear you, that I understand you, that I understand that things are really, really difficult, but I really want to work hard to capture where you would like to go? And so one of the things I think that if you're just getting the same answer over and over and over again, it might be an indication that they don't feel valued, they don't feel heard, they don't feel really appreciated. And so I would say change your tone, change your body language, change the way that you're approaching the client so that it's an inviting environment. Each of those things are really important. And then the final thing I would say is if you're getting the same answer over and over and over, that might be an indication that it's time to move to a different part of the diamond. That if you're doing a history of the outcome and you're starting to get just the same answers over and over and over, perhaps you can try moving to the resources for the outcome or the future of the outcome. Because again, if you think about it along a timeline, it becomes almost impossible to give the same answer if you're talking about something in the past versus something in the future. And so shifting where your focus is in time can also help you to shift where you are in getting the same answers over and over and over. The final thing that I would say in response to this is that if you're getting the same answer, try to make your questions smaller. If you say, what difference would it make? And they say, I would be happy. And then you can break that down and you can say, what would be the very first sign that would let you know that you're happy? What would be the next sign you would notice that you were happy? Who else would notice that happiness was showing up in this way? What impact would it have on them to see you be happy in this way? So if I just take the component of happiness and I break it down to what would you think, what would you feel, what difference would it make to you, who else would notice, when would they notice, where would they notice, all of a sudden those are so distinctly different questions that again, it's impossible for the client to give you the same answer because those questions can't be answered in the same way. So when you make your questions smaller, oftentimes you're actually also making your questions more answerable and more diverse. So hopefully those are some good tips about how to help your client when they are struggling and the answer just seems to be the same question over and over and over. Overall, I would say it is our job to work really hard to help them come up with an answer that is a different answer, that it's a various answer, that it's an answer that leads to additional information. So Paul, overall, work really, really hard and ask questions that are really, really meaningful.